Hi, I'm Jim Shaw. I'm the publisher of the Colonial Times Magazine and vice chairman of the board of LexMedia. I want to welcome you to another segment of Coffee with the Candidates. Right now we're going to be sitting down with Nancy Corcoran-Ronchetti, who is seeking a third term on the planning board here in Lexington. A little bit about your background. You earned your undergraduate degree at Regis College and graduated summa cum laude. Mm-hmm. Congratulations. It's quite an achievement. And something I never knew, you're a lawyer. You graduated from Suffolk Law School.
Correct.
Great. Well, I'll call you when I'm in a jam. And you also took a program on negotiation at Harvard University.
Coursework, exactly.
At the Harvard Law School.
Yes.
Very good. You've been a town meeting member, and not only that, you're a former chair, clerk,
and vice chair
of the Town Meeting Members Association. Mm-hmm. And also for your precinct too, right?
Yes.
You kind of work up to the, you're a board member of the League of Women Voters here in Lexington.
I'm the bulletin editor of their monthly newsletter that goes out. Mm-hmm.
Very good. And you worked with the mock town meeting.
Correct.
Where you engage the kids in school and
yes.
show them how the town meeting system works. Mm-hmm. I'm very proud that we continue to have town meeting. You know, I know it's a quintessentially New England institution, but I think it works well.
And it's a lovely experience being in the classroom with the students. They're so engaged, and it's just always a pleasure to be there. And it's a terrific learning experience, I think, and it gives them a good sense of this form of government that, as you were just alluding to, is unique to New England.
We didn't have it when I was in school, but I ran for town meeting when I was a senior in high school, the first time. And you may remember Jim Barry,
yes.
the late Jim Barry, who coincidentally, he didn't pass a town meeting, but he went into a seizure or something. I think his heart had a heart issue at town meeting, and they took him, and he passed not long after the town meeting. He was just a great, great man. But when I first ran, he took me door to door in my precinct. He showed me how to do it, how do you meet the voters, and I ended up doing very well. And it was I credit it to Jim. So
what a great story.
Yeah, it is a good story. He's a good guy, and I miss him. You were also on the 300th celebration committee,
yes.
which was a big deal in this town.
Yes. A lot of planning went into that. It was a great committee. It was wonderful just to be in the planning aspect of that, and then it went off beautifully, which was terrific too.
Good. And then finally, I know there were a lot of other things, but we could be here for 4 hours, I think, talking about your resume. But you were on the 2020 Vision Committee, and it's almost 2020, so
Correct.
Hopefully a lot of this stuff, we're meeting those objectives.
Correct. It was really well done. That also won a Bright Ideas Award from the from the Ash Center at Harvard, JFK School of Government.
Great.
For the work that the committee did. It was really well done. It was a wonderful process. It was very collaborative, and I think the recommendations that came out were terrific.
Great. Well, thank you for all of your service to our town. Let's talk a little bit about development and redevelopment of the commercial sector, and more specifically the industrial sector. I know there's a lot that falls under the purview of the planning board. Everything from homes, modifications to homes, all the way up to redeveloping major complexes and industrial complexes along Hayden Ave and Hartwell Ave. There's been an initiative that's been discussed, kind of a follow-up to the FAR increase that happened several years ago for Hartwell Ave. That was it was a great initiative. Everybody came together and they said, let's do this. The stakeholders, including the landlords, I remember the Chamber of Commerce, the town, all came together and went to town meeting, and they were able to succeed in increasing the FAR for the buildings at Hartwell Ave, and it went absolutely nowhere. And now it said the reason it didn't go anywhere is because it just didn't go far enough. So I know they're talking about mixed-use development along Hartwell Avenue, which would include, my understanding is possibly retail, residential, and mostly.
So basically a 40R, 40S development.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about it from your perspective. I mean,
Well, 40R and 40S developments are commercial and mixed-use development with residential and schools. It's a way to raise some tax levy, to raise the levy on taxes because of the way that you can tax them, and there would be some money available for the schools under 40S, but 40R would allow mixed use. So there could be housing and there could be retail. An example, if people were interested, is the Linfield Commons. That's
Market Street?
Yes,
Okay.
that's a 40R development. I think it's something that we're certainly looking at and have had discussions, I believe, with the comprehensive plan review that we're undergoing right now. We're having our last meeting with the comprehensive for community input next week at the DPW building. We encourage people to come and share their thoughts with us, with the board, what it is they'd like to see, where they'd like Lexington to be, what it is, to share their thoughts with respect to development, mixed-use development, affordable housing. And it's a worthwhile thing to do, I think. And the comp plan gets reviewed every 10 years.
Right.
But I think with respect to the way things change so quickly now and the type of environment that we're in, it may be that
Right.
if it could be reviewed more so or in less than 10 years, I don't know, but it's
Well, we're way beyond 10 years anyway. if I
right,
understand it.
exactly.
I think
Well,
we're
it's up
nearly
this
at
year.
15 years or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No,
So
I think
it's,
exactly. I think
Yeah.
we may still be within the 10-year time frame for this
Okay.
particular review of the comp plan, but it's something that the board is very engaged in. And as I said, we're having another meeting next week at the DPW
so
building.
if people wanted to, if they want to have input on
It's-
planning issues, rather than sort of on a retail level, what I mean is, like, when you have hearings, public hearings at the planning board meeting, it's usually about a certain issue. They can come in and they can voice their opinion about a certain project. Here, they can talk about the overall vision and picture of
Exactly,
planning.
that's exactly what this committee is doing, the 2020 committee. Not 2020, I should say that,
Yeah.
our comp plan review.
Yeah,
That's
right, the
exactly what it
comprehensive
is.
plan.
Exactly. I'm sorry, I should keep.
No, no,
I
that's all right.
shorten
No,
it,
it's
I
hard because
abbreviate
there's
it
so many-
because I'm
so
so
many
used to
things
saying
going on.
comp plan.
Yeah.
Because I know that obviously that
Yeah.
it's the comprehensive plan, but it should be, we've had valuable input, as I suggested earlier, and I'm looking forward to this week's
Yeah.
at the DPW.
So do you envision, is this something, how long does a project like this take? If you're talking about, focusing, any kind of time or energy, and I'm not talking about you personally, I mean like the planning board or the planning department, in terms of sort of changing the look and feel of Hartwell Avenue to include mixed use. Is that like, how far in the offing is something like that? I mean, I know it's under discussion now, but how fast does that move along?
It would depend upon the project, the particular project that's proposed for that area, but generally speaking, whenever a project comes before the board, there are obviously multiple hearings, and then the board makes their comments, and the applicant will respond to the comments that the board makes and come back with a revised plan. And it can be, I'd say generally it's 6 months to a year. It might be longer depending upon what it is that they're seeking to either rezone or to build. And it's a time-consuming process to the extent that it doesn't happen overnight. But there's a lot of information that the board gathers, and then we have the hearing, and people come and talk about it, and then the board makes their comments.
Right.
So it's a thoughtful process. I think that's important for people to recognize as well, that it's a thoughtful, deliberative process that the board goes through in order,
Okay.
as it's reviewing a project and once the decision of the board becomes known.
Well, let me use that as a place to segue into a little bit more of a controversial issue. And that was recently the Waterstone project that went in front of town meeting. It went in front of you guys. I know there's a lot of dialogue back and forth about, is this the right project for Lexington at the right time? You heard from the neighbors, and there was, in the end, there was a little concern that maybe they weren't coming up to snuff for the coming up to snuff in terms of what they're going to provide to the town of Lexington in return for being able to come and develop in Lexington. So what do you think, in the end, I know that the board going into town meeting was concerned that they weren't giving enough, and so you wanted to refer it back for further review to the planning board, and town meeting initially rejected the proposal and then under reconsideration passed it. So, but essentially, under reconsideration, they got essentially what you guys were looking for them to do in the first place. Am I correct with that? You wanted them to add additional affordable units, and they were unwilling to do that. And I don't mean to sort of kick them in the knees at this point because it's a done deal. But I just want to make sure that people understood that the vote of the planning board, because some people at the planning, I know in town meeting were saying, we're confused, they come with 3-2, now it's 4-1, we don't understand the message. And essentially, I'd like to set the record straight, if we can here, that it was essentially you were looking for them to do more for the town. And they eventually did that, but what they did was what you were looking for them to do in the first place.
And I think generally the decision, and I'm speaking from my perspective,
Right.
the decision to ask for it to be referred back was just simply because more information had become available. It was not that the planning board was opposed to it, or that we were trying to look at the entire project again from my perspective. It was just that new information had come, more information, I should say, had come in front of town meeting, and it was just the board, speaking for myself,
Right.
but the majority of the board wanted it to be referred back.
Right, I think it was a 4-1 vote. I don't
Right.
know which member voted which way, but the point is it was 4-1, yeah.
And town meeting rejected that, and it ended up passing.
Ultimately.
Ultimately.
After town meeting rejected the whole question,
Correct.
and then it came back under reconsideration
Right.
and it passed.
And it passed.
Right. I mean, there is this tricky situation that we have. We have a lot of financial need. When I say need, I'm talking about having to cover the cost of new schools.
Correct.
The new fire station, the new police station, a high school that's going to be, whether they renovate it or reconstruct it, you're talking $100 to $200 million. I mean, this is not...
There's a number of significant capital projects that are
Exactly.
looming here that are
So
on the horizon.
we have to really look long and hard at every project that'll generate revenue, and I understand that. So, I mean, and I'll say this, as I said to others, full disclosure, I was personally opposed to it, but, that's just my posture for a lot of different reasons, but I won't get into that. But I just think everybody sort of sees it for what it is. I certainly understand the position that the town had to take. But in the long run, I think that we could have probably gotten a better deal from them. But I know you guys tried. They were resistant. Town meeting spoke, and that's the end of it. So anyway, in some of these tear downs, okay, I know this has been going on for a long time in town. And I know, like I said before, residential requests, modifications come to you guys, and you guys look at them and you approve them?
If they're by right, my understanding is
Right.
if the footprint is substantially the same, then it does not. It's the planning department, not the planning
Yeah.
department, the building
The
department that issues. So if it's something that is different than what's currently there, or say, for example, two parcels get put together and they're looking to do, in addition to a by right development, and then
Right.
they want to make it larger, and then that's when they come in for a special permit.
Right. Well, there was a recent project on Merritt Road where...
That was commercial.
No, this was residential, right across from Clark. There was a new house built, and then there was a beautiful, small, single-family home, a ranch that was really in beautiful shape that came down. I was kind of disappointed to see it. I know it was two structures on, I don't know if it was, they separated the parcel or what, but I think, at some point, and I understand this, but when we've crossed the threshold to the average price of a home in Lexington being over $1 million, one, we're foreclosing on our children's future to come back here. Secondly, we're foreclosing. We're really moving into that exclusive number where, you have to be the creme de la creme to come here and live in this community. When I grew up here, we actually had a very thriving blue-collar constituency in this town, and it was great. We had economic diversity, not just ethnic diversity, but we had economic diversity, kind of the diversity that we don't have anymore. I hate to see it go away, and when I see good homes being torn down, I understand they have to come down sometimes. My mom's home came down. Down the street from your house. But it was, for me, it was a fiduciary responsibility I had to my siblings, because as executor, I was fiducially bound to get the best deal. And that's where the best deal came. So you have to look at them from all different angles. So I'm guilty in one hand, but also I'm like, do we have to do this always? Does this always have to be the first alternative? But what do you think about that? I mean, are we changing the complexion of this town, and going in a direction that we really need to be careful about?
I think from my perspective, I think the complexion of the town is changing in a wonderful direction, in the sense that there's just a healthy environment with which to raise your children, with which to live. There's socially, it's wonderful. The education system, and that's, we have a wonderful education system, and people want to come here. They want to go through our school system. And I also think the proximity to Boston is another draw, and we are also very close to public transportation. And I work with a number of people who would love to move closer, either back toward Lexington or Arlington, or even just be closer than a probably 50 or 60-minute commute. But either because of the cost of the housing, obviously here in Lexington, or it's just not economically feasible for them when they balance all of the equities. They would love to be here, but they can't. And I think that as long as Lexington remains a desirable community, obviously, and is with its close proximity to the major metropolitan area, I think people will always want to be here, and will always be looking to move here.
Right.
I can remember when I first moved here, coming from New Hampshire, I thought this was a city. It was, oh my Lord, I thought, oh, it's so big, because I came from a community that was, I think, maybe 3,000 people. So it just seemed enormous to me.
Right.
And so over time, I've noticed the changes, and I just still love this town, and am happy that I'm able to be here and live here. And I think change is healthy. I think as long as everything is balanced, as long as all the equities are balanced, and it's done in a healthy and a with community-wide input.
Yeah. Let me ask you about something else. Are you open-minded to the prospect of possibly doing like two-family homes, tasteful two-family homes on the right-sized lot and all of that, where people could, because it addresses the issue of affordable home ownership versus just affordable housing. People come in and they can rent a home, or they can rent, what might be part of our affordable housing stock that's priced, moderately, but that doesn't necessarily give them the roots in the community that you would get from being able to buy a place and call Lexington your home, actually, because you've got land under your feet. So I know it's been kind of floated out there, but I don't think it's been floated out in any real way. But are you open-minded to something like that?
Well, in point of fact, Ms. Johnson and I, 2 years ago, I believe it was 2 years ago, we worked on a two-family article. It passed the planning board, we brought it to town meeting, and it was voted down. And the thought was to make it easier for people to have a two-family, but also if it was a family that wanted to have relatives come in-laws or whatever, come in and stay in it. It was an opportunity in order to do that. And town meeting did not vote in favor of it. I'm sure that.
Would you do it again?
Oh, I would absolutely do it again.
You would
Oh,
definitely
yes.
consider bringing it back.
Yes, I thought I think it was. I'm not sure why. At the time, it wasn't. It didn't pass town meeting. I don't know.
I'm
I
not
can't get
sure
into.
either.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I know that obviously, as a proponent of it, and the board was in favor of it, we would. But I would certainly be
But
willing.
I just think the idea of like deeded two families, where where people can come in and maybe get into town for under $1 million. What a nice thing. And there are families that would like to come in and do that and have and be an owner and not just a
Correct.
renter. So
Right.
yeah. The scope of the planning board. What do you see you know, what is the purview of the planning board from your perspective? I mean, what are the things, what are your priorities there? After 6 years on the planning board, what are the things that you think are most important and serve the people of Lexington well?
I think the first thing that comes to mind for me, and I would say that from my perspective, each of the planning board members has it, is when, for me, looking at a project, what does it bring, and how it can become part of the community as well. And I think that everyone on the board, we're diligent. We obviously look at all the information, and I think that we're guided by things. For example, the comprehensive plan, which we're looking for, and we're taking ideas from. In fact, there's one last comprehensive plan meeting at the DPW.
You mentioned that. Yeah.
And I think that we review every project, and it's a long process. As I believe I said earlier, it doesn't happen within 2 or 3 meetings if it's a project that needs to be obviously reviewed. And I think that the board is very responsible when they look at a project and try to look at all aspects of it, but each board member generally brings with that perspective. Maybe they may look at something more than if another board member is easier with, has a tendency to look at something that's part of the project, but instead of looking at all of them. And I think that way, the board members, from my perspective, I think we all bring strengths to the board, and they're different, and yet we come to consensus most of the time. And I think that it's a wonderful board, the makeup of it now, and I think everybody is truly, I think, speaking again for me, but I would say that I don't think any of my board members would disagree with me. That I think each of us has what's in the best interest of the town and the citizens of the town when we're looking at projects.
I just want to clarify too, or just emphasize, when you said Ms. Johnson, that's Gina Johnson.
Miss Gina Johnson, she's currently the chair.
She's currently chair of the committee. And you talk about the complexion of the board and how you work well together. And many of you folks have been on the board a long time. And do you think some folks would say, well, that's good. They've got experience. They know what they're doing. They, the learning curve is not there because they've spent a lot of time sort of digging their hands into these and they understand it. Others would say, maybe we need some fresh eyes or whatever. What do you think? You think, of course, I know what you think. You think that experience counts. I understand that. But, for the folks that say, well, maybe we need fresh eyes, what do you think? Do you think, the fact that you've got this experience and you've been there and you know the job and you work well with the folks that are there, for the most part, that means something.
Right. And I think planning is, if reelected, this would be my 3rd term. It's a learning process, no matter what you bring to the table, and you learn something new from each project. Everything that we do, what we review, I think that you come in with what it is that you would like to see, and during the discussions with the public input, we're able to look at something maybe differently or, okay. And I think that it's important to have a cohesiveness on the board. And I think the current board members, and I think we work very well together. And I think that each of us brings our own strengths to the board, but we're able to look at a project. Speaking personally for myself, I look at the totality of the project. And I think that when I'm looking at it, if I think maybe something could be better, or look, for example, the number of affordable units. If we'd like one more, it's something that we certainly ask to
always
try
push
to,
the envelope.
Right.
You should. I mean, because otherwise you may be leaving money on the table. That's in terms of
doesn't
the
hurt
development.
to ask.
It doesn't hurt to ask. I always say you get exactly 0% of what you don't ask for. Right. So always ask. I just wanted to say I've known you a long time now. I think I was still in Precinct 5 in town meeting when you first ran. I remember when you first ran, and you were on fire. I think you became clerk of precinct 5 the first term or something like
Yes,
that.
yes.
And then next thing you know, I turn around and you're chair, the chair of TMMA,
Right.
and now on the planning board. So I know you approach this stuff with a lot of passion, and that's great. So thank you for
Thank
that.
you.
I'm just going to ask you, we're going to close out. I'm going to ask you to just, look to the folks in the camera and just let them know that, why are you seeking a third term? Why should the folks of Lexington throw you a vote on Election Day?
I think the future of Lexington is important to all of us. Look at you.
No, the camera.
So I think the future of Lexington is important to all of us, and I believe in a balanced and transparent managed approach to the planning resources, and I would be honored to have your vote. This would be my third term. I think I've been a productive member of the board, and I've contributed, and I would very much appreciate your vote on Election Day. Please vote for me. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Nancy. It's good to see you.
Nice
Always
to
a
see you.
pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
Good.